Hey there, Christopher Johnson, CPA and Certified Information Security Professional, and welcome to CPA Diversity. We created this channel so that way we can have open dialogue and discussion about minorities in the profession of accounting and the CPA designation and getting more minorities attracted to becoming CPAs. And today we have an interview with a good friend and former colleague of mine, Mr. Felix LaCroix, CPA. We talk about a lot of good stuff in this interview. It was so good, and I really enjoyed watching it back. We talked about what it means to be a CPA, what it means to be an African-American CPA, what it means to be an African-American in the corporate environment, passing the CPA exam, studying for the CPA exam. Felix has got a really good story about his journey to studying and passing for the exam, which I know you're gonna love. We talked about what it takes to be successful in your career. We talked about having a roadmap for you, or for you if you have kids, or just us as role models, setting a roadmap for the generations behind us, which is a really good discussion. I know you're going to love it. So please watch it through to the end. Have an open mind. We want to foster open, honest discussions about this topic because we really want to understand what it's going to take for us to attract more minorities to undertaking the task of becoming CPAs. And that's what we talk about on this channel, and in this video. So I hope you enjoy. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and make sure to comment, because I want to know what you have to say. I want to know what you learn. I want to know what else you like for us to cover and talk about. I think that you definitely are going to enjoy this one, and I can't wait for you to see it. So with that being said, coming right at you, interview with Felix LaCroix, CPA Diversity. Let's go. Welcome to CPA Diversity. I am Chris Johnson, CPA and CISA, and on CPA Diversity, we are here to talk about redefining what it means to be a minority in business, and more specifically, the profession of accounting and the achievement of in the pursuit of the CPA license designation. Today, I have my good friend and former colleague, Mr. Felix LaCroix, right? Am I saying it the right way, Felix?
That's it.
All right. And today he's gonna join us so we can talk about what it means to be a minority in business and be CPAs that are minorities, and try to talk about and have some open dialogue about what it means to be a CPA, what value we bring to businesses, our experiences in our career, and hopefully, those who are coming behind us can get something from this conversation. Felix, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on CPA Diversity. I really appreciate the opportunity to get a platform to talk about the profession and how we can improve it, and of course what it means to be Black in the accounting field. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you're here and we can talk about this, because I think one of the things that we need is to have more open dialogue about what it means for us to be Black or minorities and work in the profession of accounting, because we're so underrepresented as a population, right? So what I wanted to do was bring you on so we can have some, just talk about it for a little bit. But I'd like to start with just getting more understanding of your background. So could you tell me just a little bit about how you got into the profession of accounting, what schooling was like for you, and what made you want to become a CPA?
Sure. Well, going back to, I kid with my kids all the time that I've been working since I was 13, and that's the, God honest truth that I don't know if I say the word piggly wiggly. I'm sure a couple of people that are watching this cast is gonna know. They're gonna know about the piggly wiggly. That was my first job, and now Publix is a machine out there. But anyway, taking it back, my first job was a cashier. So I guess essentially I was always destined to be some type of a accountant, something involved with money and so on and so forth. So fast forward my high school years and graduated early. I graduated at 16, and I went on to Miami-Dade Community College. That 2-year program took me about 4 years to get half the credits. That's just a function of what it means to be a teenager or a teenager in that environment, friends, parties, didn't really take it seriously. So if anybody can relate with that, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
So a couple years later, I decided, hey, listen, it's time to wrap it up. Let's get the AA and see what we can do together as far as work. But that didn't really go anywhere. The jobs that I was getting, they weren't really meaningful and definitely not fulfilling, not just for money, but just something I didn't want to just do what I was going to end up doing. So I looked beyond my degree and went to work in the car business, right? So my first job in the automotive industry was as a car salesman. And, even to say it out loud, some people may cringe and they're like, oh my God, what would you give up? Well, you know what? A 21-year-old making what I was making was a pretty big deal, right. At that age. My dad wasn't really happy with it. And I've got the relationship scars to prove it.
Uh-huh.
He always intended for me to be a college-bound college boy. But I did not see the idea of being a business professional, whatever. I didn't understand what business meant, right? So I just said it was just you have an AA and business administration. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know what it means, right? So looking beyond that, didn't really have the leadership and the mentorship, but I did find that in the car business because within a couple of months I was promoted to finance manager, and then still at 22, that's a pretty big deal. My dad was still not talking to me. So I met my wife at 23. And then we, quickly got married. And then she was like, no, you're going to go get.
As wives tend to do, right?
Yeah. She was like, no, you're going to go get an education and we're going to make this thing work. I'm going to say, what did she say? I'm going to ride you like Zorro. So anyway, she rode me like Zorro. I went to UM, got my bachelor's in finance, international finance and marketing from University of Miami. And basically with my credentials, I was very shocked when I got the acceptance letter. But this is the first lesson that I learned, is that if you don't reach for the improbable or the impossible, mm-hmm. you don't know whether or not you're going to get it. So what I did is I reached for the stars and I landed on the moon, which is a lot to say from a kid that grew up in North Miami with, I can say it, like, don't feel sorry or anything, but I grew up very poor. So I grew up with absolutely nothing. My family, we struggled. They were immigrants, and my mom worked at 7-Eleven. My dad worked at U-Haul. He still works there to this day, like 40 years later. But the idea of being college bound was never something that was how do I put it? I don't want to say that I wasn't entitled, but I didn't feel entitled to receive a college education. There's a lot of kids out there right now that are feeling that,
right.
That don't know and don't think that they deserve that higher education and, right. and so on and so forth. And they don't pursue it just for the fear of being told no. So anyway, that's the story behind being accepted at the University of Miami. And that pretty much opened up the doors to all the degrees. Like my first class, I knew I wanted to be a college professor eventually. Like my first accounting class, I got real close to my college professor, and he was, instrumental in letting me be part of, understanding the curriculum in the accounting field.
Right.
Very long-winded question to pretty much lay a platform.
No, that's great. That's great. And it's good to hear. It's so funny that you say that, because there's some things that I can definitely connect with in your pursuit for higher education, right? Because I didn't necessarily come up very, very poor, but I would say that, there's always more for growth, right? Like my family, they were able to take care of me, and I definitely was well taken care of, but I've always had the aspiration to want to receive more from a wealth perspective, right? Because I think we all kind of understand, especially with African-American culture, we don't tend to have as much of the income distribution as other cultures, right? Sure. So, definitely was one of the reasons why I decided to go into business, because I just told myself, I want to make a lot of money when I get older. Yeah. That's why I want to into business, but I didn't go straight into accounting. I just started with business, and then I kind of let what my own research guide me into the profession of accounting. So I totally understand when you say, you know, you kind of set your goals because of the things you went through as a kid. If you grew up poor, you live in America. We live in a great country where wealth is achievable for everyone, right? Is what they say. So, you know, you set goals to aspire for that. One of the things that I like that you said was reach for the stars, right? Or reach for the moon and you land the stars. Like, are you familiar with Les Brown at all?
Yes, I know.
From Miami, I mean, I would imagine you know, right?
Indeed, it's one of those things that, you know, that's exactly where I got it from. Just watching one of his, you know, not before I reached for the stars. It was just one of those things where I saw him on the stage, and then he had his conversation, and then he said, it was like, if you don't believe it, I mean, he didn't say, I'm paraphrasing, but if you don't believe it, then nobody's gonna believe it. I was like, see yourself the way that you want to be, and even if you fall shy of that goal, you'll still be in the neighborhood. So the bigger your vision, and, you know, not necessarily to get into faith immediately, but like what we plan for, what we see is just so small compared to what, you know, the God wants for us, right?
Exactly.
So if you can think big, think very big, think bigger.
Yes.
Think big. I can't stress it. Like, think big.
Yeah, absolutely.
In contrast, I remember asking asking a young man, 11. I was a big brother, big sister in Atlanta. I was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's like, nothing. Let me let that sink in for a second, because it'd be a tear jerker, right? Yeah. Nothing was the answer. Yep. And if that doesn't like put it into perspective, there are kids out there that just don't want to be anything. Right. And they're Black, and they're like little Black kids running around, and then as soon as somebody tells them, plants that seed and tells them what to be, that's where they're gonna go. That's where they're gonna be. And that's why we're here, man. And that's why my wife and I, we decided to, create CPA Diversity, just because she's been going on. She's not a CPA herself, but she's been along the journey with me all these years, working in the profession of accounting, achieving my CPA license. I'm also a CISA too, so that's a Certified Information Systems Auditor. So she's kind of been through the road, and we thought, this would be great just to have a platform where we can start to show what it can be to be a business professional as a minority, and give some of these kids who might have no aspirations at all, someone somewhere to look up to and say, hey, there's a community of professionals out here looking to guide you, looking to help you get to where you want to be, and not just a cheap strive for nothing, but strive for something, especially in this profession, because one of the things I've noticed that, through my career is that everywhere I go, I don't see people who look like me, right? And one thing we could talk about is, our days at EY. You and I used to work at Ernst & Young together, and we weren't on the same team, but we definitely would see each other and have those conversations. You were on the MRS team, right? Yeah. So, but we both shared in that technology background, right? Like, so I was on the risk assurance team, you were on the MRS team, but we both had like a technology focus. And, and I love working with everybody at Ernst & Young. This great company, right? Like, from my perspective, and I'm sure you probably have some stories you could share there. But, one of the things I've always noticed was that, it was a predominantly white environment, and they were very accepting to me from my experience. And they definitely have like the diversity and inclusiveness committee and all the programs that they have. And although that, because they're a bigger company, you do see more of us represented in that firm, and I'm sure in other Big Four. But, when you look at the numbers, they're skewed, right? Like, there's like predominantly a lot more people who are from like a Caucasian background versus Hispanics and African Americans and other nationalities. And then I went to work for some smaller firms and saw that it was the same thing. So that kind of makes me say to myself, wow, what can I be doing to show African Americans or young Hispanics or, young Indian kids or whoever from other backgrounds that,
the profession of accounting is a great career to go into, and to also strive to achieve the CPA license, because that's something that could show your value as a professional and as an accounting professional in general. So it's good that, you know, we're having this conversation, and I want to segue into another question here. What was it like for you when you studied for the CPA exam?
So to give a backdrop for the study process, so I taught the CPA exam. I teach this. I'm still an instructor for Becker Review. I've been an instructor since 2012, and I remember the day I decided to teach it was I was in the break room at EY upstairs. You remember how Becker, there was a young lady that used to come from Becker every other Wednesday and try to, you know, peddle her software, which was great. So I was in a break room getting my coffee. I probably just had joined EY at the time, and I just passed the, this was in 2012, let's call it 2012. And I just passed the regulation, and I'll give you another story about the regulation in a second, the regulation section. And she said, I said, I don't need the software because I just passed the CPA exam. I had a hard battle with regulation, and finally I won it. I had a very tough battle. It's just the way your brain is wired. That's it. You know, some people are just like, oh, regulation was the easiest. It was like, and some people would be like, that was my kryptonite. Okay.
That was the only one I had to take twice.
Yep. Well, my story in a second. So I said, I know regulation so well, I could probably teach it. Are you interested in teaching? I was like, sure, why not? I know that thing inside out. And sure enough, within about a month, I was cleared and I was teaching regulation, and I was very excited. I was very effective, so much so that they asked me to teach all the 3 sections.
Wow.
And then I continued teaching all four sections. But alas, I just stopped in 2018 because it was just a lot to do. And they changed the format and everybody was going online. And I still do some online classes, but it's just time consuming. It's the same amount of hours. So anyway, I had to balance. That's the only reason why I'm not as active. So to give that quick backdrop, the regulation. So I'll just take you through all 4 sections in the order I took them. And everybody always asks me when I teach the CPA class, it was like, what's the best order? What do I take first? I was like, do I take the easiest one first, or do I take to build up my confidence, or do I take the hardest one first? Because I know I'm gonna fail it 4 times and I don't want to lose my sections, because you get 18 months. If you're familiar, even if you're not familiar, I'll tell you, it's 18 months that you get to pass that exam. If you don't pass all 4 sections, the first section that you took on month 1, if you don't pass within 18 months, that section dies. And you have to take it over. And anybody who's watching this video and lost a section, I feel for you. I'm with you. So I took, my first section was BEC. I took the path of least resistance. I'm a business savvy person. I knew, CMA, so I knew management accounting, and I was able to feel my way around. I studied for about 3 months. I took the exam. I got an 85. I thought I looked at the score, because this is how you check your score online. Okay, you go, and then you pass. Okay, that's how. Now, if you pass, you're okay. Okay, so that's how you check your score. So I checked my score, and it was an 85. I was like, it's 85 passing. I was like, oh, expletive. Oh, expletive. I know what this means. And I was like, I'm a CPA, and my wife was like, well, not yet. Okay. So let's get the other sections down pat.
But the momentum is there now.
Yeah, the momentum is there. So I got the confidence, and then so I went to FAR. FAR was a beast. Actually, the day before I was supposed to take FAR, I had a fever of 103. So, it was not a good idea to go take that CPA exam. So the day before, I paid the $150 postpone, and I postponed for 5 days. I slept for about 5 days, and then a week later, I took it.
You think the idea of taking FAR is what brought it on?
Say again?
And so you think the idea of taking FAR brought on the fever?
No, that it was you're partially right. It was a function of not sleeping.
Yeah.
Your immune system just dies, not staying hydrated, studying, 12, 14 hours. at a time, taking minimal breaks.
Yeah.
Now that I know what I know, it's like 2 hours is your maximum length of time that you need to study, and then you take a break and then come back again.
Yeah.
That's the way you populate in your brain. That's how you learn languages and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Anyway, that FAR section was a beast. Fortunately enough, I was a pension analyst at the time at Southern Company in Atlanta, and I was a pension analyst. And the exam, one of my sims, I could tell you now, I'm not teaching anybody. One of my sims was a pension sim, pension. So I obviously did well enough that my score was skewed well, even though I bombed a couple of multiple choice questions. My score was skewed well enough by my simulations that I got a 76. Okay.
Okay.
I was like, is that passing? I don't know. Did I pass a second one in a row? Or what the hell? So anyway, so the momentum, like you said, kept on building. And then the next one I took was regulation. So, regulation. So no, I'm sorry. I apologize. Audit. I took audit, and I was an auditor at the time at Kroll Horwath. And I did fairly well. I think I got like an 85 or an 86 or something like that. So that was strong. And then came regulations, the last one, right? Yeah. So, and I had a whole portfolio of clients when I was already a senior. Well, acting senior, you know how they give you the work but don't give you the title. So so I was acting. People are probably shaking their heads. I was like, yeah, I know. So I was an active senior at the time, and I had a full load of clients, and I just couldn't study. I was always traveling, and I would study at night and fall asleep. So I didn't give regulation plus it was tax. How hard could it be, right? Yeah. So individual, corporate, all right, S corp, individual, partnerships, whatever. It's just answer the question. It's going to be very clear. The answers are going to be very clear. They're just going to jump out the screen right at you. It was like, no, it won't. So, so I didn't give it the respect that it was due. And I went in. In fact, I remember studying for about 2 hours before the exam, because there's 7 sections, right? So I studied 1 through 4, individual, corporate. And then back then they tested ethics. There was an ethics section that they couldn't decide whether or not to put in or to put out. Right. The business law section as well. Business law. Who needs to study for business law, right? So anyway, so I went in and I sat for that exam. I literally just stared at the screen. Some of the answers, I was like, what? I can't do this. Am I supposed to do a calculation? I don't know. Am I? Well, eliminate A and B, and then let's just guess between C and D. And that was pretty much the whole exam. So my score was 74. So I did the thing, right? And then I was like, that's failing. 74, right. 75, like even C, you fell for it.
Yeah, you're right.
Congratulations, you got a 74 on the first. I thought you failed it. That's failing. Okay, that's
that's even worse because it's like one point off. Oh my gosh.
That was the worst. So now I'm getting cocky. It was like, even though I failed, I still have 8 months.
Yeah. Okay.
Even though I failed, I only failed by 1 point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to study business law, and because it showed you exactly where you fell off. So I'm going to study business law, study ethics, and I'm going to ignore, individual and corporation taxes. And I know enough. So what I did is I did exactly that. I prepared for 2 weeks. I sat for the exam, and then I did the thing, and I got a 74 again.
Oh, no.
So and then the feedback was, you did extremely well on business law. You did extremely well on ethics, but now you did poorly in individual.
But you know what? The CPA exam, they say it's a smart test, right?
Oh, yeah, it adapts.
Yeah, exactly. It'll know exactly where your strength at, and then it'll start giving you the things you're not strong at.
So I started reading up on, this was after I became a CPA and I started teaching the exam. It is absolutely an adaptive test. Every section except for BEC. The first testlet is moderate. If you do well, then it gives you a harder section. And then it already has everything that you know how to do. It's not going to ask you again. So if you know how to do, individual corporations, you're not going to get individual taxation on maybe 1 or 2 questions, but you're going to be riddled in partnerships or secure transactions.
Yeah.
Secure transactions, right? Yeah. So you're going to get riddled with those. Just because you did well on the first testlet. And then if you bomb that, then they give you a moderate again. So it's just like the GMAT, right? and then your testlets at the end are basically the same. So to make a long story short, the third time I took it, I just didn't have time. I remember I just had accepted the job at Crow-Horwath. Yes, at Crow-Horwath. So I went from Atlanta to Miami, but the only place I can get the test was in Jacksonville.
Okay.
So I made a detour. I had no sleep. I sat in front of, I studied, like I did study. I studied a lot. I sat in front of the testing center. I slept for 2 hours, and I woke up. I reviewed the entire section for 1 hour, and I went in there and sat and took that exam. And the screen was jumping, the dollars were moving around, the screen was vibrating. I called the guy over. I was like, there's something wrong with the monitor. And he was like, no, I don't see anything wrong. I was like, look at it, it's vibrating. You know that, because it's like white. It was a white noise. I kept on seeing white noise. That's because I was exhausted.
Wow.
So I got a 74. So I got a 74 again. So three.
Yeah. Oh man, you're killing me right now.
Here, right? 6'2", 6'2",
Wow.
with 240 pounds. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I'm gonna lose my BEC. So at that point, I have one chance to take it. So I went to my partner at Crow. I was like, look, listen, I need 3 weeks off. I gotta study for this exam. I know that you understand. So they took my entire client portfolio. And then they allowed me to take 3 weeks off. I locked myself at Georgia State for 3.5 weeks, and I studied that exam to the point that there was no question anyone can ask me that I would not know. So I got a 96.
Back to how you got with Becker.
Yeah.
Teach that thing now.
So I got a 96. I was like, there were questions on there, like the guys giving the test were probably like, this guy could probably write the test. That's how much I knew. That, like I knew the test. Like obviously, it's not so this thing is not about intelligence, right? It's not about you have IQ 110, 115 plus, you can pass the CPA exam, right? Bar any type of any type of struggle that you may have outside of studying, family life and so on and so forth. I didn't even address that, but we all know that we have to balance life, kids, and wife.
Exactly. Yep.
But anyway. Long story short, I got a 96 on it, and it was just one of those things where nobody listen. If they would have told me I got a 74, I would have drove to Tallahassee, and I would have been like, or wherever NABA is, NASBA is, and I would have been like, y'all got this one wrong. Relook at my test, okay? That's how sure I was. That's what a little prayer did too. My wife was like,
wow, that's a great story, man. That's a great story. Crazy. Wow, and you had to take it three times? 3 times.
4 times I took it.
4 times. The 4th time is when you were successful.
The 4th time.
But the good thing is when you did get it, you killed it. You got a 96. Wow.
That's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Let me put it in other words. That's what us have to do. Because this exam is not written for us. This is these type of exams are like the LSAT, the LSAT, the GMAT, the you name it. Any standardized test is based on a standard, and we as minorities are not the standard. We're
right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
You look at it at face value, like these tests are written like they're hundreds of years old, and they're just because I don't know if I don't want to even get into this, but to be a lawyer back then, you just were an apprentice, and then you just became a lawyer. You didn't have like a test. They created tests to test your knowledge, but of course to put some barriers. That's why Florida is the hardest state to get your CPA license in.
Yes.
California is the hardest bar to pass, and so on and so forth, because they have to protect their homeland. All right, so we could probably have another hour.
I'm sure we could, and we probably will schedule another one. This is a good one. Hey, I got a question for you then. So you described what you've gone through to study for the exam, and it sounded like a lot. And one of the things that I want to discuss is, why don't we have students or young professionals in the profession who are in accounting attempting to get their CPA license? And, as me personally thinking about it,
one of the things I think is just the amount of effort it takes to actually take and pass the exam. Like you said, I think you said initially you studied for like 10, 12 hours a day, right? You didn't do it straight through, but you used to take breaks and you would study a lot. And even with you and your challenges with Reg, you had to study quite a bit just to get past and over that hurdle, right? So since there's so much in it, can you describe for me some of the benefits and values that you perceived after you become a CPA and what it really meant for you in your career?
So I'll start by talking about, you know, the stark difference between CPA and not having a CPA.
Okay.
Being a transactional accountant, because I was an accountant before I took the CPA exam, I worked in AP. I was an AP clerk and I was an AR clerk. My first job in accounting was for Claim Entertainment in New York. This was in 2005, 2004. Acclaim in New York City was a video game company. They went out of business. And if you're old enough, you remember.
I remember Acclaim. I remember them. Yeah.
You look up some games. You'll look up some really old games. They had anyway, I won't names. I don't remember the names right off my head. But anyway, it was Acclaim Entertainment, and they were in bankruptcy. And my first job was APAR clerk. So MBA from Nova, undergrad from UM, AP clerk, $9 an hour. You do the math. That's okay. But anyway, that's New York City, and those were the cards that I was dealt, and I wasn't gonna, I was gonna just I played my hand. Right. So fast forward, the next job, Barnes and Noble, I was bulk AP clerk. So that means that they would drop a bulk of invoices on my desk, and all I would do is code them all day and put them into ADP, and then they would close the month. So that was my job. Imagine, every hour someone just drops a stack of invoices about this big, and then you manually, you put the bar scan on the invoice. There was no scanning back then.
Okay.
You put the barcode on the invoice, and then you code it with the account that it should be going to. So anyway, anybody who's doing AP right now,
the technology wasn't as advanced as it is now.
Not yet. So fast forward to Barnes and Noble. Fast forward from Barnes and Noble. So my first audit job was with Marvel Entertainment. Back then it was Marvel Comics.
Wow.
So don't ask me. It was just New York, and like I said, reach for the stars, right?
Yeah.
So it was one of those things. Saw an internship at Marvel, applied for it, and then they called me back, and it was 2002. Oh, this was in 2002 because this was right after Sarbanes-Oxley, 2003, okay. Right after Sarbanes-Oxley. Don't quote me on that timeline. I'm pretty sure it's between 2003 and 2005. Okay. But anyway, I used to always ask myself, why are you so special? Because I was sitting there in a room with EY auditors, because I was internal auditor for Marvel, and I was 32 at the time, I think maybe 33, whatever. We can do the math some other time. But I was sitting in the room with, how we as auditors, we go out and then we have the room to ourselves, and then we sit there and we congregate and then we do our work. So I used to always drive my little mail cart, reminding you again, 32, 33, MBA from, Nova.
Mail carting.
Yeah, mail cart. Yeah, mail cart, giving the mail for the day, and going back and forth to the auditors and doing my audit work. I think my first official job was to write the test script for impaired goodwill impairment.
Okay.
I didn't even know what goodwill was. Okay, so he was just write the test. You are gonna write the test. You have an MBA, you can figure it out.
Yeah.
No, MBA didn't help anything. So anyway, sitting in a room of auditors and their CPAs, and I've asked a couple of them, CPA, and frankly, I didn't even know what AI CPA or the damn CPAs. Then I'm just kidding. I want to take it that far, but anyway. You could tell that there was I was not envious. I think that's the wrong word to use. I was baffled. It was like, what did you do, you as a 25-year-old black, 25-year-old white young man, or 23-year-old white young lady? What happened in your life that was different than mine
Right.
I know the answer, obviously, because one, I was older. I was an older student. And of course, I'm going to use the roadmap and I'm going to stick a pin, right? They had a roadmap,
right,
to follow. We're going to ignore for a second who gave them that roadmap, okay?
Right.
So I'm going to come back to that. So I always wondered whether or not they were entitled, because first of all, I wasn't entitled. I didn't feel entitled to go to school. Like, I should just take what's given to me and be happy the fact that I have a college degree, right? So for them to be a CPA, let me look at that. Let me see what they did differently. And all they did was study and pass this exam.
Wow.
I could do that. That's all. And then half the time in my head, that's all that they did. But half the time they were still in the midst of studying for the CPA license. Mm-hmm. But I Googled it, I looked it up, and then that was the differentiating factor.
Right.
They had that acronym behind their name. And then, I'll give you a fast forward 10 years. When I say I'm a CPA, everybody goes, okay, well, he must know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Like, well, forget all my pretense. I know he's black, and I should really feel some way about it because I want to put him in a box. I have this box that I put all black men in. I really want to put him in there, but damn, he's a CPA. And I say, can we be adults? I'm not going to curse, I promise. But yeah, I have this box that I want to put you in. And then, I've been told, Felix, you intrigue me. Or Felix, man, we got to talk. It's like, what is so different about, I was like, nah, man, dude, I grew up in North Miami. All I did was take a test and get some credentials and then put on a suit, get my, articulate a little bit better, like get a couple words in my vocabulary differently, but I could still scrap, okay, if I really had to. But if I really had to, but
it's suit for you.
Well, in corporate America, maybe we can get to that because I think you have a question that alludes to it. The challenges, right? If I lose my temper, I'm aggressive. If I get a little bit more direct than people are used to because of my skin color, I'm labeled aggressive, right? Or I'm labeled, he's so confrontational. But if you take away the color or maybe put a shield here where you can't see what I look like a telephone,
right? Then,
well, that guy's, he's a businessman. He's a shrewd businessman. I've been accused of being shrewd. All right. But anyway, so I digress on that point. We can come back to it. But that roadmap that I was talking about, mm-hmm. What I'm getting from my CPA license and studying for this exam and teaching and having degrees and all of that, none of that matters. Yeah, I'll get to my goal. When I was like 22, I was like, I'm gonna be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. Yeah. Well, that goal is kind of deferred, a couple of decades, but that's okay. That roadmap that I was talking about, now I have a roadmap. Yeah. Now, what I did with that roadmap, both myself and my wife, what we did with that roadmap was we put it for our kids. So what I was alluding to earlier about them having the roadmap, I didn't have a roadmap. Mm-hmm. I didn't. Like at 22, I was just figuring it out. And I was lucky enough that my mentor caught me in the car business just in time. He was a UM grad, mm-hmm. and he was a old school Cuban man. And he took me and he grabbed me and was like, within 2 months, he liked me enough. And we're still friends to this day. He's still my mentor. He promoted me to finance, and then he built that hunger to read newspaper, to get current on current affairs. And he gave me a roadmap, right? Because he went to UM, I went to UM. He went to law school. I tried to go to law school. That wasn't for me. But, it was one of those things that what I want to give and what you want to give is that roadmap to this kid that sees other people that don't look like him or her doing that. That's why so many, that STEM is big. I'm not STEM, but STEM is a big deal in my household, right? You got my son, like, I coach my daughter to believe that since she was little that she knew algebra. I taught her algebra at 7, and mm-hmm. I was like, it's easy. And I showed her algebraic equations. She knew what an equation was, and so on and so forth. Did the same thing with my son. Naturally, they're progressing to computer science and law, and that roadmap. I keep on going off on a tangent, but that roadmap is so important. The difference between me pushing that mail cart and them sitting at that table, that they had a roadmap handed to them. Their parents were CPAs, their parents were lawyers, their parents were teachers, their parents were whatever, you name it. Their parents were janitors, but their janitors, some way, somehow, they had a roadmap that they were able to funnel down to their kids.
Right. And you know what? So I think it's so important that you say that, because I think as a collective, right, our culture, we don't have enough roadmaps in our families. And I know that I'm not going to say that we don't have any, because there are totally those of us out there who do understand the importance of having that roadmap, who do put that and instill that in our kids and the youth that are around us. I just think we need to have more of a focus on keeping that as something that gets implemented in every household, but for African Americans especially, because, you know, like you said, I didn't have that roadmap either. You know, I think the one roadmap that I had was my sister, who before me went to college and graduated, and my grandfather was just very, very proud of her for doing so. And the one thing he did for me is he used to pick me up from work. I used to work at UPS in Miami, down in Hialeah. And he'd pick me up every day, and he would say, you know, when you graduate high school, you can go on to college and be a college graduate just like your sister. And he would literally, I don't know if it was because he was getting older and he was forgetting that he would tell me this, he would literally tell me every day, right? So it became well, this is not a choice. This is something that I have to do. I have to go to college now. And, you know, even though it wasn't a formal roadmap, him even saying that and kind of giving me that repetitively instilled the idea of go get a higher education. You know, the roadmap, though, was something I had to figure out on my own. So I think that you're right. We don't always get that roadmap. We don't always get that roadmap. And even though, you know, maybe, you know, white people from white background or Caucasian background do, because like you said, they tend to have family members and parents that are already really invested in business and they have the relationships and they're already lawyers and they understand, you know, what it takes to actually operate at that level. Go ahead.
A lot of us take what other people say with too much stock, like too much. We don't take it at face value. We put a lot of weight into what people say, right? Mm-hmm. So I preface what I'm about to say. Be careful who you share your dreams with. Be careful who you share your roadmap with. Be careful who you share your aspirations with, especially friends and family. Because what ends up happening, even though I'm saying in one side, the roadmap needs to be there, at the same time, it could be a negative effect. A quote, why do you think you can be a lawyer? Right. Lawyers just all Jewish white men? What kind of lawyer are you gonna be? This was what was spoken to my wife. I mean, from her own family. Right. Even when they have legal problems, they don't necessarily consider her. And then it's the stigma. So same thing for an accountant. Are you really an accountant? Are you like a real accountant? I was like, well, that's kind of what like the CPA exam, the CPA means. It's I do some accounting. Yeah. You know? So I would consider myself an accountant. Or the weight that you give someone that says, man, that test was hard, man. That test was like, tell me, what was your experience with it? I was like, well, I didn't take it. I just know. That's why you have to ask the questions. It was like, you know, are you really going to go through this and go be a CPA? You know, that exam is tough. And I was like, really? Did you take it? I was like, no, it was too tough. Well, I'm going to take it and I'll let you know how tough it is. How about that? Yeah. Because what ends up happening is that's too tough then belongs to, well, it becomes a voice in your mind and you're like, well, okay, it must be really hard. I'll just be a nurse.
And you know how, man, I'm so glad you said that.
Anything wrong with nursing? All three, I have two sisters that are two of the three that are nurses, and they've gone and they're very, they're very successful in their field. I'm just saying, like, too many of us Black people just kind of like chuck it and say, I'll just go do this. Yeah. Because it's easier.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm so glad you said that, man. I'm so glad you said that. My mother's in healthcare.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it because they probably told you to go be a nurse, right?
Especially in these times, right? Like those are they are serving as heroes right now with all the.
Yes. You're not taking anything wrong. You're not taking anything. Just like he says, well, everybody needs an accountant, right? No, it was like, please don't, that's offensive.
No, but you know what, Felix, you said it so well. You're right, because I've always felt that way, which is when we, I've had friends and people that I know, especially when I was in college, and I went to an HBCU, so, predominantly Black school, and the second you say anything about studying hard or doing something that might require a lot of effort, it's almost like this wall goes up and they're just like, what's the other route? What's the way that I don't have to do this much? And it's like you miss out so much by taking that route. The things that are worth having are worth working for.
I got to tell you, the nursing program, I was a my first major was physical therapist at Miami-Dade. That was my first major. After the third chemistry or anatomy class, I was like, this is too hard.
Yeah.
So being a nurse is not easy.
Right.
My son-in-law, my future son-in-law, is a nurse, and he actually got a job at a hospital in Texas. He moved to Texas. My daughter's, very long story short, I just wanted to say that because I know a lot of people, are going to be.
No, not to take away from the profession at all. I think the thing about it is in any profession where you're going and you're having it as your career, you're going to need to study, you're going to need to learn it, and it's going to take effort to do. I think the thing about it is don't put a cap on what you can accomplish, like you said earlier, just because you might have to overcome some obstacles to get there. And when we're talking about the CPA exam and the CPA license, we all, it's known that it's one of the harder standardized tests to take. So instead of, if there's a young student out there who has heard about it but decided that they don't have what it takes to achieve it or to do the studying, or there's a professional who's in accounting right now but hasn't decided to go get their CPA license because they understand it takes a lot, and maybe they have a family or they have things that might impede their ability to study and actually take. Don't put that barrier on yourself by saying, oh, it's too hard. Go out and actually attempt to take it. Like you said, at least if you attempt to take it, you understand how hard it is, and you understand if you really are just not somebody who can do what it takes to get it. But, I tend to believe that you can achieve anything you want to, especially when it comes to education and studying. And one of the things you said earlier about the CPA exam, which was, FAR is like one of the hardest. Like every time you hear about CPA, everybody says FAR is the hardest section, right? Financial accounting and reporting. And to be honest, to me, FAR was the easiest one for me.
It was
Yeah, it was. And you know why? Here's the reason why. There is really only one answer in FAR, right? Like if you know it, there's one answer. They might give you an answer that is just a little bit off, but if you've done your calculations the right way and you absolutely know it, there's only one answer that's going to be. Now, I can't say the same for BC, Reg, and Audit, because those are just a little bit different. But that's why I found FAR to be the easiest, because I had a professor in college who said, if you want to be a CPA, you need to start studying 8 hours a day. So kind of like the 12 hours you were talking about, right? And to me, that already sounded like a lot, but what I learned is you had to break it up. But he said, before you take an exam, make sure you understand every problem. Just go in and try to understand every problem, and don't attempt to schedule an exam until you're comfortable and confident knowing you know every problem. So it kind of goes back to your reg story, right? Like you basically had to know everything before you walked into reg.
So what I would tell my students is, if you're doing your homework on the software, we're not doing this as me as an affiliate of Becker, but Becker gives you a 90%, as long as you're above 90%, they'll give you your money back. Right? As long as you complete all your homework, you complete all your tests, and then you're 90%. If you fail the exam, you get to redo the class for nothing. So I tell my students, if you're doing your homework and you're studying and you're getting 75, 80, 85, you're going to fail. I can almost guarantee it. Because what happens is, you know the information enough to pass during your homework, just enough to pass. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen is, when you go on the exam, you put in test test conditions, you'll be hearing the clock ticking. You'll be hearing heartbeats. You'll be hearing sneezes. You'll be hearing the cameras. You start 10, and then you see 28 questions. You're on question number 1, and question number 1, I guaranteed, I could put money on it, is going to be the hardest question of those 28 questions. But they put it there strategically to put you on your right?
Your heels,
And then the second one is going to be just as hard, and the third one. So in order to toward that, you have to be an expert. The whole CPA exam is geared toward an expert. They expect you to be an expert, because what the CPA license says is that you're an expert at accounting. You're an expert. So that's what the expectation is. So if you're not an expert in that section that they tell, there's 10 sections. You don't have to be an expert in all 10 sections, but you got to be an expert at least 7 or 8, right? You have to be able to articulate. And now that the test has changed, we could probably do a seminar on how the test changed over the last couple of years. Right. Now they expect you to not only study and memorization, but they expect you to apply it. So they'll give you a balance sheet and an actual balance sheet income statement, and they'll give you entries, and they'll give you adjustments, and they'll tell you to go book them.
Yeah.
And if you're an accountant and you're working in accounting, you shouldn't have a problem with that. But if you're a student that just graduated and you never had a job and you're studying for the CPA exam, guess what? You're gonna, unless you practice and then get 90 or 100, if you get 100%, listen, anybody who's watching this who's about to take Becker and who's about to study for this exam, I'll tell you the way you guarantee, and then people, all their ears would perk up, the way that you guarantee that you're gonna pass this exam is by doing the entire software, wiping it, and then doing it again.
Yes.
Now, if you get 100 or 90 or 100 the second time you do it, even though it's the same material and the same questions, if you can do that, you go book that exam and go do it. Yeah. If you cannot do that, if you think that you're gonna just get 75, 80 and go sit for that CPA exam, you're going to fail. I'm not wishing that for you, but I'm telling you, you got to give the exam.
Make sure you're prepared. Make sure you're prepared before you go in for the real deal.
Yeah, it's no joke. I think a lot of people just need to research it for themselves. A lot of people a lot of our people, right, learn the hard way. And I tell my daughter that all the time, like my oldest, 22, she just completed her bachelor's degree at University of West Florida. She got 3 acceptance letters. She's going to the best one. And it was just one of those things is you don't want to learn the hard way. I learned the hard way. What you want to do is take good counsel, research it for yourself. And listen, I didn't make this up. Actually, my wife taught me this, 20 years ago. We've been together for 25 years. So she taught me you gotta research it. You gotta research it, and you gotta know it for yourself instead of taking somebody's word for it. Somebody who's looking at this camera, they're like, oh, that guy is well put together. Look at those degrees. Look at that thing. Listen, I put those up for your benefit. Okay. We're about to paint next week, okay? We're about to paint next week.
Thank you.
The floors are about to get jacked up on Monday, and it's how you want to portray yourself, but how somebody else sees you is they're like, he put in some work in that right there.
That's what your wall is screaming though.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Because it's nothing but putting a little bit of rolling up your sleeve, doing what the next guy is not willing to do. Black, white, and different.
Yeah.
At the firm, you see at EY that actually serves you well, because not a lot of people, they come to EY, they're not willing to roll up their sleeves. Listen, I remember when one of the partners came up to me and he was like, I like you, blah, 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 and this and that, and we're gonna go ahead and develop you. And the idea was to get me to climb up the ranks to make it to partner so they can have more, Black partners and so forth, and then represent it. And all of a sudden, you become the face of UI. But anyway, to promote diversity, that's great. I think that's a wonderful thing, which is a point that I'm gonna get to eventually. But the idea is that just having someone paint that picture for you is not enough. You gotta go in and be able to do it yourself and research it and know for sure. I got sidetracked because this thought came into my mind that I definitely wanted to share is that in most firms, they don't really, they see you as an asset, right? They see black, white, or indifferent. They see you as an asset. If you prove to be a useful asset, you will get promoted.
Yep.
If
exactly.
you and there's only two of us on this floor. Two of us being two of us. There's only two of us on this floor, so we have to be that much better than our counterparts. So you got to be that much better than the guy next to you. You know, the competition piece is very something very serious,
especially in that environment. And that's the one thing that I learned being at EY is you definitely have to be of higher performance. They expect a lot out of their people, but which is why they're one of the best companies to work for. They're one of the big four, right? If not the big four, the number one. I think they kind of interchange amongst the four, but
I got to keep it very real. And of course,
please.
We're 10%. Black people are 10% of this population in the United States, right? You could look at it 11, maybe 9, 10%. Mm-hmm. So if we take that math and we apply it to a room of 10 people, 1 out of 10 is going to be black, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And 9, maybe 3 are going to be Hispanic or other, and then 6 are going to be white.
Right.
Just the way it is. In the profession of accounting, it's even worse. It's usually 1 black guy, 1 Spanish guy, 1 Asian guy, everybody else white, right? And then they'll take that minority pool and they'll put women, Asian, African American, Hispanic into that diversity pool, mm-hmm. and then you have white. So if you're an EY owner, a partner, if you're going to let in 1 black man, 1 Chinese man, or 1 other, are you going to take a mediocre black man? Or are you going to take an exceptional black man? Yep. Or are you going to take a lower than average black man? On that same question, I'm trying to keep it real. You've got 6 white guys. 6 white guys, and I'm leaving the gals out. Because I'm being very specific and very purposeful in my analogy. You have 6 white guys. You can afford to have 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 dummies in that group. And God knows that we've run across some pretty idiotic people that you asked, how the hell did you get your CPA license? How the hell, and this is not a racial thing, it's just math, right? How the hell did you even get in the building with the stupid thing? I asked one guy to go get me a sandwich at EY to order me a sandwich. I said tuna, and then I changed my mind and said turkey. And so he brought me a Jimmy John tuna turkey sandwich.
Oh, wow. I'm
not making this up. So anyway, how the hell did you get in the building, for one? Okay. But so if you're gonna be that guy in the room to if they're gonna let you in that box or in the room of 10, you have to be exceptional. So in my household, black excellence, I have my 11-year-old. His avatar, I'm not making this up. His avatar says black excellence, and it's a African American on Fortnite.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Fortnite, but I've heard of it. Black excellence.
Black excellence, and he's spewing it. He's spewing it. So anyway, that's what we run in our household. So I implore everyone that is looking at that CPA license, take it seriously. There are not enough of us. So because this is again poor analogy, but if there's enough of us out there, a couple of us that aren't as, because I'm not like a high, I guess at this point I do have a higher IQ than average, but there has to be room for a guy that's not as confident in his intelligence or his abilities. There has to be, because how are you supposed to get better if I don't get a chance to prove to you that I can get better? Right. I have the muscle, I have the ability to learn. All I need is the opportunity, and most of us have to just pave that road and get that roadmap. I get very lengthy in what
I love it, man. This is a great conversation, man. I really appreciate you sharing. There's a lot of similarities in kind of my thought process on it as well, and the experiences that I've had in my career as an African American working in accounting, and I think that this dialogue is what we need. I've been reading articles, and we don't get a lot of updates on the progression for African Americans and minorities in accounting. There was an article that I saw somebody wrote from Bloomberg Tax last year that was talking about updated numbers and things of how the profession is doing with getting minorities to be more involved and getting to be CPAs. And I think that, you know, it's been the same narrative for a long time. The AICPA is trying to figure out what they need to do to get more African Americans, more minorities involved in the profession. They do these surveys. They understand, and they get some, you know, results from the surveys that say, well, you know, some say it's too hard, some say they can't integrate into the big firms well. Some, you know, some of it has to do with not introducing the profession of accounting to students early enough in their educational, right, careers. So I think it's good for us to have this platform because we can just have some open dialogue about how we feel as professionals, our experience, what we need to do in order to help inspire more to do so, and really have that open, honest feedback about what we can do to make these results and better, right? Get more people involved and start to dramatically change the numbers. So
it's got to be a gut punch, man. It's got to be a punch in the gut, not a gut punch, a punch in the gut to make you understand that, or make people understand that credentials are credentials. They can't take it away from you, right?
Yes.
Like, you know, technically they can, but you would have to do something crazy to lose your credentials. But the credentials open doors, because you can get in somewhere and they could take it away from you, or they could kick you out until you build your own, right? Until we build our own.
Right.
I could take this on a segue because of the day that we're recording this, but I almost, you know, I won't take this as a political platform. Our own police departments. We need our own.
Think on it because you're right. It's a very relevant topic.
We need our own CPA firms. I remember in New York, as an accountant, I reached out to a prominent CPA and a prominent attorney, which represented all rappers and Black artists and so on and so forth. And the advice he gave me was like, you know, just go study, go get your CPA. This one professor, my professor that I mentioned earlier that I wanted to be an accounting professor very early on in my career, I asked him, I was like, why did you become an accountant? He was like, because I knew I would always have a job.
Yep.
And then it sunk. And I was like, I was a finance major at the time. I still didn't heed his warning, you know, or his, I ended up getting a master's, and he was my professor at UM for my master's of accounting. But him saying that was like, you'll always have a job. And that's ultimately it. The last guy out of a room when the company is falling apart is the accountant and the attorney.
Yeah. That's
it. The attorney is kind of like the guy that wraps it up. But if you could put an accountant and an attorney into one body, oh, that's a thought. We were thinking about that, okay?
Yeah, actually, my accounting professor, he was a white man, but he was an attorney and a CPA. Yeah.
You know, the guys that write the book for Becker, they're all like Peter Orlento, JD CPA, Tim Garrity, JD CPA, and those guys make a pretty good living for themselves. As an accountant, you can go work anywhere for any company. I tried to persuade my daughters into doing it. They just picture me at my desk, and they hear me complain all the time, and they see me, you know, struggling and so on and so forth. What I was going to bring up this point earlier that, you know, if you're the guy in the room that's the go-to, the partner came up to me and was like, we have a client that is that we need to get to like tomorrow by Tuesday, and you have to go there, and we need somebody to go. Are you willing to go? I was like, well, wait, where is it? They were like, well, London. I was like London, like
London?
Hey, London? They were like, yeah, of course. What other Londons do you know? I was like, I don't know. Maybe I thought you were like London, Missouri or something. It was like, so I was like, hell yeah, what are you kidding me? So I get to go to London for a couple of weeks, and then I audit, you know, a client up there. And, you know, California, we need somebody to go to LA. Yeah. Like, and then, you know, as an accountant, you get to see these places, New York, get to hang out in New York and then you're working, and then you're exposed. And then, why wouldn't you want to be an accountant? I mean, it's crazy to me. And
I'm glad you said that. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add on to that, because you're right. And that's part of the reason I want to have these, because the experiences that I've had to have. I'm from Miami, Florida. You from Miami, Florida. You know, as African American men from Miami, Florida, I mean, we already have a lot of odds stacked against us.
Yeah.
And to have, you know, when I first started at EY, I would travel just in Florida, you know. But then I made the decision to leave EY. I went on to another firm that was like a regional firm, I guess you would say. And I started to travel all over the country: New York, San Diego, Oklahoma. I've been to Cincinnati. I've been all over the place. And I remember one day I had a senior manager on my team call. You know, he IM'd me. He said, "Hey, you want to go to Spain?" And I was like, "Spain?" He's like, "Yeah, we got a client, you know, that we need to go do an on-site audit for, and you know, I thought you might be interested." And I was like, "Yeah." And here's the thing: at the time, I just knew it was somewhere out of the country, and I know Spain, but they were like, "We're gonna go to Madrid." And I started to do my research, and I was like, "Wow, it's such a beautiful country." And it was the first time I got to really travel outside of the country, and it was great. Yeah, man, it was a great experience. Food was great, and you know what the great thing about it is, since we're on travel and we're auditors, it's like everything, we're not coming out of pocket for it. You know, the client's paying for it all, and we're getting to experience it. So, you know, we're working hard for sure. We're doing what we have to do to provide service to the client, but at the same time, you get these opportunities. You get the ability to see places and see these.
If they only knew that's what it was like. All I have to do is just take this test, right? Pass it, and then I'm gonna get a license, and then I'm gonna get to travel like the world and see clients and then talk money and it's okay. So if I could just put a grain into somebody's head watching this, is that you remember reaching for the stars? If you pick a company, pick an industry, pick the type of client. Let's say for all intents and purposes, you say you want to be in J-Lo's entourage, right? Or Jay-Z's entourage, or you want to go be around what's his wife's name? Beyonce. Yeah, how can I forget, right?
That's my wife right there.
Yeah. If you want to be in that realm, then you pick entertainment as your industry, right? And then you have to go work for a public company. You have to go work for Big Four. There's no other way to slice it. I'm going to tell you, that's just right. McGladrey is great. BDO is great. Crow Horwath is dear to my heart as far as a firm. Nothing wrong with that. But if you want your resume, you want somebody to pull up your resume and go, and then pull up the next resume and be like, if you want that to be yours, then you need to have the name on there. You need to have FPL. You need to have AutoNation. You need to have big names on your
recognizable organization.
Yep. And you have to have these things on your resume, because what happens is, as an HR person, I'm either gonna toss it to the left or to the right. Okay. Yeah. So the idea is that you want to be that person that has the name recognition and the clout. Like we're not dropping names. My wife works for Chase. She's in the capital markets. She's an attorney. She's been an attorney for the last 10, 15 years, whatever that number is. But having that name recognition is a big deal. AutoNation, EY, right. Those things matter with what you want to do. But all you have to do is just pick your industry, pick your what you want to do in that industry. Do you want to be an entertainment attorney, entertainment lawyer, and then fix your eyes on a corporation that you would like to go work for.
Yeah.
And then go Pfizer. You know, if you want to be in pharmaceuticals, see the biggest name there and then apply for that name. Oh, one of my clients was Google in California. It was like, you want to go work for, you want to program? You want to be a programmer? You want to be a guy? All you got to do is book a trip to Sacramento or Mountain View, right? Yeah. And book a trip to Mountain View, to California, and then book a tour, and then see for yourself. In North Miami, we don't get to see. We have the blinders on.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna say a they versus us, but it's easier to keep the blinders on for us. Yeah. What's happening right now with the riots is people are the blinders are off. Like
Right.
the blinders are off, and people are just frantic of what they see.
Right.
Because this has been, okay, so no political platform, but this has been going on for centuries.
Right.
All right. So now the blinders are off, and I've never seen. I'm 47 years old. I have never seen what's going on in our community today. So
Yeah.
that's topic for
Yeah. I'm sure we'll have the time the discussion.
The roadmap.
And I'm sure we'll do this again. You and I. This was great. I really enjoyed this. No, but, you're right. And one of the things I was going to say is I'm glad we're having this discussion on this day, because we are in the somewhat in the whole, I guess, wake of the riots with what happened in Minneapolis. And one of the things I was thinking about yesterday was, okay, you know, we have peaceful protests. Those are great. Those make a statement. Then it starts to go a little left. You start to get the rioting and people who are just, and although they're making a statement, you know, it's not necessarily what I think, you know, some people might agree with it, some people don't, right? But what are we gonna do after we riot and we protest? You know, we need to start doing more. And I think what we are doing is starting to show how a different narrative about what it means to be an African-American and African-American male, especially in this country. And it's not just all of us out here trying to cause problems. You know, there are a lot of us out here who are respectable men who really want to do good for the community, who want to provide service, who want to help people, and who want to be role models to the youth and not just of, you know, our own culture, but of all cultures, for all people. And I think the way that we do that is to have these conversations and to, you know, to share our experiences and hopefully inspire others to want to walk a path similar to ours. So I think that, yeah, I think that it's worth mentioning for sure. And I think that what you contributed to this discussion today is going to help a lot of people. I know we've been on it for a while, so I'm going to wrap up because it is Saturday. And I want you to get back to what you're doing. And I know I got to get my family out here. We got to go grab some food too. We've been talking for a while. But thank you, Felix.
I do have a to-do for everyone is go on the AICPA website and look up Start Here, Go Places.
Yes.
Start Here, Go Places. So that's a to-do. Go on there. They'll walk you through whether or not you're made for the accounting field or not. It is a very good platform to.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, and it'll teach you a lot. It'll teach you a lot about what a lot of different people do in the profession. One thing I love about Start Here, Go Places and the accounting profession in CPA overall is that you think it's like just taxes. Every time I tell somebody I'm a CPA, they're like, oh, you must do taxes. It's like, I work in IT. I don't even do taxes or financials or anything. Yeah. But there's so many avenues that you can go on. Like you said, you pick an industry, you pick a service that you can do, and then there's a wide range of professionals with this designation. So we'll get into more of that on another one. So Felix, thank you so much. Thank you. I think that this is going to be great for a lot of people. I want us to have more conversations. So if you're open to it, I would love to have you back on sometime in the future again.
No worries. And people can you can feel free to share the link or a way to get my my email to people if they have questions. I'll be more than happy to answer questions. I make myself available to all my students when I'm in that capacity. Yeah. People have asked me some pretty wild questions and I've answered them. And just one example, after about 12 months of going back and forth with this one young lady, just a couple of weeks, time has flown by. This was in February, so it's not a couple of weeks. A couple of months ago, she emailed me and told me she passed all 4 sections, and she was struggling. She was 24 years old, and she was struggling, and then she was about to quit, and she came to the class at the National Association of Black Accountants, and the last one in Atlanta. And when we met up, and this was in Orlando, and when we met up, she came into my class, and we talked, and I gave her my number. I gave her my email address, and we correspond. So feel free to share my email address on a link so people can.
All right. Well, there might be a lot of feedback. There might be a lot of feedback. So
we'll different email address. So
we'll get one that you can screen. That way it's not flooding your work email or anything.
Yeah, I'll put a Gmail together and I'll send it to you. And
that'd be good. That'd be good.
We'll do that. Gmail Felix
Absolutely. Hang on for me for a second before we end it, but I'm just going to stop the recording, okay?
Okay, cool.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, everybody.